I still can't believe how underrated and hardly mentioned this flashback scene's dialogue and moment between Zeke and Amalthus is, especially for how impactful and critical it is to one of the game's fundamental concepts and core themes. Now I get it, Xenoblade 2 has some stunning moments, but this to me is just so unique and subtly potent. You can really do a lot with just focusing on the down-to-earth struggles of the people, the ever-dwindling time they have on living space, and how that pressure really evolves people. There's only one other scene in this game that I feel isn't talked about enough, and it just is underrated, that really boosted my personal opinion of Xenoblade 2 fundamentally over time, and even connects nicely to both Amalthus and Rex, but I'll touch on that later, so stick around because it's critical, alright? So the moments in question are actually from two different scenes, the ones called Who is Weak and Who is Not, and I Lived as You Wanted. As far as both of those go, I'm really for the most part referring to the flashback portions of both, but also kind of to the moments after we see them. Now a little bit ago I made the video, what is the best scene of every chapter of Xenoblade 3, and one of those I picked what I consider to be the best in the game. Well, I said in that one that I do the same or similar for the other Xenoblade games, so if you made it this far, congrats. I consider this to be Xenoblade 2's best scene, it being such a loaded talk but presented and executed so calmly. We know that prior to this, thanks to that backstory of Pandora and Zeke, that they have history with Amalthus and him having saved their lives, but it wasn't until the first scene of these two, called Who is Weak and Who is Not, that we see that the connection between Zeke and Amalthus goes deeper than we left it up to after that backstory. And the aspects of this scene that made that connection most interesting were the dynamic shifts. Firstly, Amalthus really addresses Zeke, asking him what he sees of the people he's taken in there, almost in a tone of it being a guiding question, and with Zeke's answer of them being people struggling to survive like everyone else in the world, Amalthus then asks him if he's killed anyone before. Now this one sounds like both actual curiosity, but again, like a guiding question too. These both sound this way, both due to Amalthus's putting on of a more generous, high-class, yet kind person willing to help any of those around him. So you can very much so hear it like he has a point of asking these questions at all before he even asks them to Zeke, all with the intention of teaching him something. But with Zeke's second response, which I gotta say, Zeke was talking back right here, as he told Amalthus that he hasn't killed anyone because he hasn't seen the need for it, which really surprised Amalthus verbally. And then Zeke goes on, essentially believing that no matter the excuse that people give, that people kill because they're weak. And for the second time in a row, Amalthus has been outstepped. This is how the dynamic between a man who has saved the life of another man and his blade goes from an attempt to be a mentor or teacher to being the one being taught, simply due to Zeke's nature being so headstrong, blunt, but still wise. And don't get me wrong, Zeke's a funny dude, but he's not stupid, and it kind of bothers me a little when people say and act like he's some idiot, to be honest. He's traveled the world since he got kicked out of his home, and Patty may have teased him about learning more of the world, but he really did, so he won't be so easily influenced or fall in line to being taught by another person's views when he already has seen the world with his own eyes. And that's how the dynamic shifts. Amalthus doesn't even try to deny Zeke's perspective, because at this point his approach isn't gonna work, and just says he supposes he's weak then. Yet that weakness is what got him to where he is, so he stands by it. But what does that mean? What does he even gain from holding this position? But we'll get to that, So then Zeke presses him, saying, so you hate humans, and then Amalthus surprisingly shifts the dynamic back to even just like it started, saying no, he hates this world instead. Zeke was so close to coming to a clear conclusion on Amalthus's nature, to settle on a feeling that he could drive home for how to figure out Amalthus in his head and justify it, just for it all to be blown away in an instant by the first time Amalthus takes off his mask. You thought Zeke was going to be the only one taking power in this conversation? Nah, Amalthus had to spin the block real quick. And there's a specific reason why I called it a dynamic shift and not a power struggle, because of the presentation of the talk. Although vying for angles on each other, it isn't intentionally hostile or underhanded. It's mature, and they both end up learning things about the other that they did not expect, regardless of agreeing or disagreeing. But they're both still left with questions about the other and the lengths they would go in this seemingly helpless world. Through the lens of two unconventional yet now integral characters, we get to see the game's very first story beat shown more love through a contrasting lens, because remember, how does Xenoblade 2 start? It starts out with Rex telling us about the world of all rest and how it's struggling due to rapid Titan death and decline, and then the singular legend of the world tree being the only hope that's left, even if many think it's just a fairy tale. And just like Nia tells Morag when Morag calls Rex young for believing in the potential of the world tree helping all rest, she says it's better to put your bet on a possible solution that may be fairy tale than governments and people that have no solution at all except destruction. Now that's not word for word what she said, but it's almost word for word, still the same meaning. So in this flashback scene, Zeke was more like Nia, where Amalthus was more like Morag, one thinking more on the personal and more human and ethical side, side and the other thinking on more of the professional and political side of things, thinking more with the brain rather than the heart. And let's not forget the great way this first scene ends with Zeke's questioning of Rex if he likes the world and then if he likes people. And y'all know Rex, he answers honestly with a more positive outlook, as he should, because in the world there's both good and bad, and realistic doesn't automatically just equal bad or worse, because in reality there's plenty of positivity too. Now at first with this I thought Zeke was just curious, which he was, but then he says the most interesting thing which clears this up entirely, just wipes away the entire fog.
Well, suppose a guy who hated himself had the power that you do. If someone like that were to meet the architect, I wouldn't be surprised if they wished for the whole world to disappear.
It all becomes clear. Now don't forget, he did learn about Amalthus's true feelings, about how they aren't necessarily against people, but the world. Yet the only human he truly hates is himself. It's why he tries so hard to change the world, because just like the hardships and suffering the common people experience, he has become a twisted man, all for the efforts to change things. He hates the beast that he has become simply because of the cruelness of this world, and he hates what the world has forced him to be. But that's just his mistake in his line of thinking. He wasn't forced to be this way. He has gone too far, and he knows it. Oh, he knows it. He just doesn't know that the architect is not okay with this. Now, if you didn't watch the video where I did a deep dive into the character Moebius from Xenoblade 3, I said something similar for him, and check out that video, by the way. The link is in the description. I got other videos like that and more on the way, so go ahead and subscribe for me. Go ahead and hit it. It's real easy. It's right there. Thank you. Both Amalthus and N know exactly how far they have gone, and they hate themselves for it. But that's exactly why they become so manic, because they feel like there's just no way out now. So they just continue to dig that hole deeper. Shania was the exact same way. And Xenoblade loves having antagonists that are like this. And I love them too. Of course, it doesn't justify the atrocities that they all three end up committing, but still, it's rough in these worlds. And they all have just a relatable foil. For N, it's Noah. For Shania, it's Gondor and Senna. And then for Amalthus, it's actually Rex. Now think about it. He's became a driver of an Aegis, set his sights on the world tree to save the world. He became without parents at a young age, optimistic and tried his hardest to save others and bring hope to them all. But unlike Rex, Amalthus's intelligence and long life, I say, is what did him in. He had put in so much effort to help people, yet those he helped may not always have done good things with a new lease on life, because not everyone cared about saving the world, but to only temporarily here and there save themselves. Amalthus gave up on his own heartfelt ambitions and surrendered to the logic of pure preservation without care for individual lives. He wanted more power and more controlling, gave away his capability to even be a hero, and that transitions us right into my second favorite scene in the game that's underrated, but it's very brief, and I think it speaks towards the heart of Xenoblade 2 and what set Amalthus and Rex apart even more. When they get to Endol, almost upon the castle, Pyra asks Morag why she didn't just take them in. Morag responds, because of Adam. The legend of the driver of the Aegis is one that gives hope to the people, and if it gives hope to the people, it gives them hope to the world tree to save all rest, and that needs to remain intact. Her entire point here is, if she detained them, or rather took them in the name of More Ordained, their mission wouldn't be a hopeful legend come reality, but then it would become a military operation. And the people don't want or need that. They already don't like the government screwing things up as it is. It needs to remain the legend of an individual seen as a star in the night sky. And this is also where Amalthus failed. And that segues us into the next scene, because the next half of the flashback is contained within the final confrontation between our group and Jin versus Amalthus. And in this scene, right before we get to the flashback part of it, there's an interesting segment that is a huge key idea to how I came to realize that Amalthus, in my opinion, is really, once again, the strongest foil to Rex in Xenoblade 2.
Architect, I should have been your chosen one. I lived as you wanted me to. I did. I always.
This This is what made things click for me. Like I said earlier, it made me realize that even more than Jin, even more than Malos, Rex's biggest foil was none other than Amalthus. And remember, even when they first met, Rex was able to sense Malos from Amalthus. They're once again two sides of the same coin, just one taking a drastically different turn when giving up from their good intentions being used to hurt others. Even though with so many similarities, one gave up on relying on humans and one didn't. One hated the world and one acknowledged its downsides yet retained their love for it. One was unable to understand why they weren't chosen, and one didn't understand why they were chosen but understood fully well how to correctly utilize its world-bending power. And I can't express how much appreciation I gained for both Amalthus and Rex from coming to this realization. I just wish there was more. And speaking of which, there is. So right after that segment from earlier, Zeke has another memory of him and Amalthus, and this talk begins to dig a bit more deep into actual people instead of just the world, because he already establishes it isn't people that he hates. In this scene, Zeke talks about how bandits take blades that look attractive and sell them for bids, especially more human ones like Pandoria. And then Amalthus starts to loop back around. He brings back his inner thoughts about humans never changing, about how when they want something, they'll take it by force if they previously denied it, and he tells Zeke this. Zeke proceeds to fight back, saying not everyone is like that, to which Amalthus responds, even if they don't act on it, or if they give it up, that feeling was still there at some point. So that begs the question, why is Amalthus helping these people? Zeke questions this as well. I mean, we see in present time, he's willing to take the lives of others to achieve his end goal, that is at the end of the day, to save the world so that people no longer have to be corrupted by its unfairness. So why? Amalthus says so he can't forget what type of people humans are, which makes Zeke wonder if that's what saving his and Pandoria's life was. Amalthus was silent for a second, but then he starts to waver. He thinks back to how hard Pandoria fought to save Zeke's life. Amalthus says he remembers seeing a similar scene, and we get to see he's thinking of him and his mother, to which he says maybe that too was one face of humanity. This is the acknowledgement. This is the first time we get to see the true Amalthus, his old self back in reality from so many years ago. The desire that he mentioned earlier, that people use to take something by force, but this he thinks on is the safekeeping of a precious person's life, the safeguarding of somebody you love. That desire drives people so incredibly far. So he realized that if that's not even enough, then that's when someone else must extend a hand to help. So saving Pandy and Zeke may have been partially due to his usual reason, but mostly it was a re-emergence of his real, true self. Amalthus could have turned tail right then and there, but he didn't. He soon became too far gone. And then in the present time after the flashback, Zeke questions why Amalthus looked so sad back then. And wasn't that the real him too? Yeah, it really was. The Amalthus that scaled the world tree to find someone who could truly save it and brought back both Aegis cores, which let me express is a huge deal, because bringing those back changed their world forever. And it really is just a shame how far he descended, man. He truly was trying to help and aid others, but the route he took was not at all it, because you can't simply put yourself above all others in pursuit of a grandstanding show of power and then take the lives of those you're at the end of the day trying to save by erasing what you actually hate, your world. Blades and drivers are connected both ways. So even though Malos did get some malice from Amalthus, I feel it's wrong to say that Malos was only bad because of Amalthus. Yes, I remember what Pneuma said, but fundamentally, the emotions and feelings of the driver and blade goes both ways. Malos also used his own emotions and put them into feeling and action, just like Pneuma and Ontos did, all held up from their own desires to do them, even knowing the depth of said choices. And remembering all that just really makes that line of Zeke saying, "Wasn't that you too?" It's so much harder, because it seems like he's just so upset, like, I saw the real you. Why didn't you stay that way? To treat Amalthus and especially Malos like they could not help themselves or they could not help it, I think is wrong. They're simply too human for that. And that's why I think these two scenes are just incredible and my personal favorites in the entire game. And I think they really are the best, the way they hit every single fundamental and core component this game is built off of, along with expanding the cast of characters that we have directly by way of Zeke and Amalthus, and then indirectly to characters like Rex, Morag, and Nia, along with Mythra, Pyra, and Malos, of course. Even here at the end of this video, I can't express how much I came to love these two simple scenes. And I've said all the way, except maybe for the music choices of Desolation and Walking With You, some of my personal favorites in Xenoblade 2, right next to With People in Darkness. Those are some excellent choices for this scene. Great. Beautiful. If you enjoyed this video, go on ahead and subscribe for me. I got more bangers on the way. And leave a like and a comment if you want. And leave the secret code #chosen1 on your comment so I know you stuck around to the end. Thank you all for coming out, and I'll see you in the next one.